very good morning to you all, and welcome to day one of the conference. First of all, I would like to introduce our panelists. Next to me is Pablo Perversi, and Pablo is the Vice President of Foods for Southeast Asia, Australia, and New Zealand of Unilever. The gentleman next to Pablo is Mr. Kian Peng Sia, CEO of NTUC FairPrice Cooperative. I'll let the gentlemen introduce themselves a little bit so you know a bit more about themselves.
So my name is Pablo. Been working for different companies, but Unilever for the last 20 years. I've been around the whole world, worked in Latin America, Europe, Middle East, and now Asia. And I've done various different jobs within the company, both as managing director of a division in North Latin America, sales, marketing, and even started off in finance for some time. Very happy to be here today to share some inspiring knowledge, hopefully, and to make everybody excited about some of the things that we will be talking about.
My name is Kian Peng. I'm with NTUC FairPrice, which is because I know that quite a lot of you are not residing in Singapore. So let me just tell you a bit about NTUC FairPrice. We run a chain of supermarkets, hypermarkets, and convenience stores. Our turnover is about 2.8 billion. And I've been with the NTUC group for a bit over 12 years. And yeah, it's also a pleasure for me to be able to join all of you here, and also to meet fellow members in the industry, Pablo and Phil. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This session is planned to be very interactive, so I'll ask the gentlemen some questions, but if you have a question during the session, please do stop us, raise your hand, and one of our assistants will go to you, and we'll take the questions from the floor anytime during the session. I'll start with a question on trends. Obviously, we're human beings, but we can actually become zombie priests as well, by whatever Chris Skinner has presented during his presentation. So there has been a lot of changes in the last 10 years. What is it that's going on in the next 10 years, gentlemen? What are the key trends that will influence the consumer retail world?
So I think we're going to get 3 charts coming up.
Can we have the slides on?
If the slides are on, just press and hopefully we'll get the first one. No, that's the second one. There we are. Okay, so let me say that first we live in what we call a VUCA world. It's volatile, it's unpredictable, it's complex, and there's a lot of ambiguity at the moment in this world. And the needs of the shoppers remain largely unchanged. But the reality is that their expectations about how we do the business to fulfill their needs is being transformed. The first big change that we're actually seeing is a social change coming from every corner of the world. It manifests itself in different ways depending on where you are in this world, but if you actually see the emergence of Asia, it's actually a very strong and powerful change. Asia today represents 60% of the demographics in the world, but 1/3 of the purchasing power. And within the next 10 to 20 years, this is going to double. So the upgradation of society within this part of the world will imply that people will have access to things that they haven't had before. They will have access to toilets, they will have access to washing machines, they will have access to houses which they've never dreamed of in the families prior to the ones that they're living today. So the reality is that that's just one of the things. But when you see aging population, you will also see that the way that people live through longer lives will also change many of the ways that they shop, that they manifest themselves in the products they need. And just very small insight, but when people are old, their taste buds lose the power to taste things. Now, there's not many people talking about flavor-boosted food for these people. And yet there are needs that they have in order to enjoy their life just like everybody else. Households' lives will also become much more complex. As urbanization takes place around the world, people are on the street, women are actually working, people don't have time. The whole management of the house forces you into digital platforms that allow you to shop into internet, that allow you to do things that you may have not even considered 5 years or 10 years ago. And that's another aspect of social change. And then, depending on where you're sitting, this actually hits you in very different ways. But if you're sitting in Europe, for example, the crisis is actually forcing people to completely rethink the way that they actually live. Young people are staying at home for the first time in their lives. So there are very different manifestations of this. Do you think there's anything that I've missed from the ones you have?
Actually, just to share with the audience, just last night, we were all exchanging notes, and Pablo and myself found that many of our views, there was the sun, the stars, and the moon all came together. There was a lot of alignment in our views. So I think many of the things which Pablo have said, I subscribe to. I guess it's trying to understand what the consumers will behave 10 years from now is indeed a billion-dollar question. Chris earlier gave us a snapshot of how technologies will influence how consumers will react. My own perspective of this is that I've always said that it's a bit of science but a lot of art in trying to determine how consumers will behave. But certain things, certain trends are very clear. Pablo alluded to it. At least certainly in Asia Pacific, certainly in Singapore, we see the population aging. We see households getting smaller. And these will have implications. I'll be speaking largely from a retailer's viewpoint. What does it mean to a retailer? How will consumers react? What will consumers buy? Smaller households, older people, what are their needs? I think it calls to questions, it poses more questions than answers. Whether you're a food manufacturer or whether you're a retailer, but the implications are quite serious. How would mobile and technology influence the way consumers buy? That again poses a lot of challenges for retailers. The need for physical space, from our point of view, I think that will moderate. Perhaps we may not need as much physical space than before. We need to provide more options for people to buy their products, buy their services. And in what form, how will we respond? I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I don't think new devices, new technology, new ways of payment would displace others. In short, I think consumers there'll be a lot more segmentation, a lot more demands that they will put on all of us. And as retailers, as manufacturers, I think we just need to, unfortunately, cater to a very demanding, we used the word spoiled consumers earlier. We just need to cater for them and provide all the options for these consumers.
For years, we've been talking about Asia as having a huge youth population, and all the products, all the brands are gearing towards serving this youth population. And now we're talking about the trend of an aging population. What is it that your organization has done to actually respond to this trend?
I would like to say that, certain things are very important in my perspective. I think the consumers now and in the future will still gravitate towards brands that they can trust. And therefore the Unilevers are what they are a big giant, brand building is important. Consumers will still look for value. No matter which strata of the population you're at, whatever your income level is, I think value is something which will be universal and will always be there. I think consumers will also look to brands, look to organizations where they like to know more about the organization. Are they doing the right thing? Because with information, with internet, with technology, the access to information is so easy, so accessible. And therefore, the days where you tell consumers what you are about has reversed. The consumers know everything about you. If you're doing it right, that's good. If you're not doing it quite right, you get to know as well.
But on aging population, sometimes it's actually simpler than we think. It's about making it easy for them to open the packs. Because the reality is that, older people don't have so much strength in their hands. It's what I was saying before about making sure that the taste of your product is strong so that they can feel that taste in a way that they can't because they have the taste buds are actually melting down or going away. It's about making sure that their hair care products are different than the ones that people with full hair have, because they will have a different hair requirement. And I think those brands that are actually being there for that, and I trust that Unilever is one of the people that are proactively working in all types of solutions, not just for aging solutions, but these are just simple things that we can do and make a change for them.
And Pablo, just to add on, we need to make life easier for them. What does it mean to, as we age, I think gone are the days where you go for big packs, for example. So the way products are made available, the size, the weight, I think this will become major considerations.
What would be other key trends that you have identified for the next 10 years, Pablo?
Okay, so I'm just pressing the button over here when it works. Do you think you can
go to the
have
next
some help
slide,
here?
please?
change the chart?
The next slide.
Okay, anyway, I'll tell you about it whilst the chart actually comes with a little bit of delay. But it's about the digital revolution, yeah? And this is the fastest growing change trend that is actually implying a huge way of being, working, change in our lives in the way that we do absolutely everything. Nowadays, and Chris actually said it, but he didn't put the number to it, there is 2 network phones for every living person in this earth. And not just that, but when you actually look at the penetration of mobile platforms within those phone networks, we're actually finding that the growth of mobile platform, not even computers, just the mobile phones, is providing people with options they've never had before. People can be on a supermarket shop floor comparing prices with 3 other supermarkets, and the power has actually shifted now to the consumer. The consumer has all the information to make every single choice that they want, and that information is giving them all that power to decide and to make the choices. So the nature of the whole of the brands and the retail world changes, because it's not you that has the power because you're close to the house or because you actually control something or have a shop that actually is multiplied in many different places. It's the consumer who is making a proactive choice, because if he doesn't like you, he actually goes and gets it on internet, and he can actually get it nowadays from another country if he doesn't even like the product in your own country. But not only that, he can evaluate the way that you produce, the way that you treat your people, the way that you actually cost your products, everything. Because there's plenty of information on internet to give you the choice on a very well-informed decision. So value for money is taking a completely different meaning. It's not about just price anymore. It's about how you portray your brands. It's about, does your brand become relevant in the search for information that people actually have? And the purchasing decision-making process, which used to be a funnel, which used to be funneled directly into the supermarket where they were making their choices at point of purchase, has now become very blurred and has now become almost like a spider web in which information comes from absolutely everywhere, and you might actually be entering a shop and get a coupon on your computer that is actually from a completely different shop because they're targeting you as a customer because they've noticed that you've gone into a shop. So the reality is that the whole nature of the influences that consumers have will change dramatically and in a very meaningful way. The other thing about digital media is that we used to talk about e-commerce, and the reality is that the social media and the digital media and the e-commerce are merging completely. Because what you're actually finding is that you get in Southeast Asia only about 30 million people an hour, or 30 million searches an hour on food. This is huge by any standard, but it actually shows how many people are concerned about what they're going to feed their families tonight. And it actually shows as well that the moment you go into a recipe, well, if you actually link that recipe or that Facebook page that gives you recipes to the possibility of selling through your internet store and linking it to a promotion and linking it to a bundle that might actually even give you the total solution for your meal, you got a very powerful device. But everything merges together. It's not anymore having a web page makes the whole thing clear.
Would you share the same view, Mr. Sia?
Indeed, I think the lines are all getting blurred. There's a lot of convergence. But I like what Pablo said. I think with social media, running a business is not just retailing per se. I think engagement is now, in a sense, a new norm for all businesses. Engagement with your various stakeholders. And the consumers today, and certainly in the future, I think they want to have a say in your brand. And if they like your brand, they will talk about it. And obviously the converse is true as well. So in our case, for NTUC FairPrice, for example, we have our own Facebook page. And I see that Facebook is now indeed becoming almost a must-have for every organization. The next question is, what do you use it for? In our case, we use it, I would say, largely as a form of engagement. To find out, to share, to talk to our customers, and for our customers to talk amongst themselves. And from there, I think there's a lot of valuable insights that you can glean from these exchanges. It's a bit in the old days, you need a lot of focus groups. That still takes place, that's still useful. But I think this form of engagement is a lot easier. You get it on the go, you get it on the fly, you get it instantly. And you are, there are no limits to what you want to find out. And I do believe that the consumers, our consumers, your customers, our customers, they want to be part of you. All of us need to find ways to deepen and intensify this engagement, and that's something that we try to do.
This digital revolution we'll actually get back to it because it's probably one of the key topics for today. But before we go there, I would like to hear from you if we've got any other key trends for up to 2020.
One last one, and this actually we're seeing absolutely everywhere in the world. As people have more information, as people are becoming much more ethically conscious of the things that they consume and the things that they do, but also as a result of the fact that we are consuming far too many resources for the resources that can actually be replenished by the world, and therefore we're taking more money out of the bank than the bank will have to give us. So there is an environmental concern about sustainability and about how we can play a major role towards the future generations whom we're working so hard for at the moment. Now, what we actually find is that this ethical and sustainable business is now becoming a demand from consumers. People are not asking themselves anymore, do I like this or do I not like this? They're saying, I want this. And many of them are actually prepared to pay a certain price for it, although most of them are still wanting it as part of the deal. So this is a pressure that we have to put upon ourselves to respond to what consumers want. There's three manifestations of this which I think are very important. Consumers want products that are environmentally friendly, from sustainable sourcing, with real ingredients, local, natural, clean, recyclable, and sustainable farming, if you actually want to put it. Yeah? The consumers want it all. But they also want that those products are produced in a social, responsible way. It is very important that in the rural communities, kids are given the chance to be educated, that women are treated in the right way, that the factories are allowing people to elevate the standard of living so that these products are then considered ethical. And more, what you're actually finding with a lot of different incidents like Tesco in the UK with the horse meat and things like this, that the magnifying glass is actually being put on all of these things to make sure that you are working with companies that can provide that transparency, that traceability, that hygiene for those products that is actually making a difference in the markets because people are demanding it. The other thing that is actually happening is that NGOs are going to start putting a lot of pressure on companies because NGOs want to improve the world. They're there with a purpose, they're there with a mission. And when they see these things, which now become very public very quickly, they will start putting a lot more pressure. And we see some of these things actually happening all over the place, with Oxfam working hard on their brand reports, with Greenpeace every once in a while coming through with many different issues. So the reality is that this is not going to stop. This is going to continue going. And working with them to continue improving is something that all of us will have to learn how to do and will have to do much more of.
My question would be, say for example, us at Origins Coffees, we actually work with Rainforest Alliance and we certify our beans up to about 90%. Obviously in developed markets like Western Europe or Australia or America or Japan, this is really important. The consumers actually make purchase decisions based on that. Is it true that this is going to be influencing the purchase decision of consumers in Asia and in emerging markets?
I think certainly. I think, as what Pablo has said earlier, I think sustainability is a key consideration and a key buzzword. Whether you're an NGO, whether you're an individual, I think the recognition and the awareness that we all need to do something to protect our environment, to protect our planet, the trend is clear. And consumers, they want it all and more. They also want to know that they, in their own ways, are playing a part towards building a more sustainable environment. And therefore, whether it's about buying a product, where this product comes from, how is it made, the retailer that's selling it, are they doing it in a responsible way? I think these are all parts of factors of the way they make their purchasing decision. So I think this is something that, like it or not, you're in business, you're a manufacturer, it's something you cannot ignore. The CSR that we now talk about is a must-have. As a manufacturer, you need to know that people are consumers want to know how you source your products, how you manufacture your products, under what conditions. As a retailer, they also expect you to do the right thing. the concept of doing the right thing is three simple words, but hell of a heavy responsibility. And just to do the right thing is not easy, because the need to balance between your commercials, your financials, and the part on social responsibility is not an easy task. But having said that, it is something that I think all of us, well, we can't run away from it. If you run away from it, the NGO, put aside the NGO, I think the consumers will speak with their wallet and with their feet.
If you want some figures on that, I've got some figures that we'll show in the next presentation that I do, but research shows in Southeast Asia Pacific that 64% of consumers prefer to buy sustainable products. So they are putting their money where their mouth is. Not just that, but when you actually analyze the study of sustainability, you actually find that the preference for sustainability is higher in Indonesia and in Vietnam than it is in Australia. So there's a little bit of a myth about in the mature countries or in the developed world, this is really appreciated, and in the developing world, it's not. This is wrong. In the developing world, people are in contact with nature much more than in the mature world, and therefore they appreciate it and they want to take care of it.
Let me go back and zoom in on the digital revolution that you mentioned as one of the key trends. Chris has mentioned the virtual store in South Korea, and you've mentioned, Pablo, that there's an intertwined social media plus e-commerce plus mobile. Let's elaborate a little bit more about that and share with the audience what your organizations have done in order to respond to that trend.
Well, we do have an online store, and we see that the people who are using that platform to do their purchases is certainly growing very quickly. But if you ask me, will that displace the need for physical stores? As I said earlier, it won't, in my opinion, but it is an important space that will see a growing segment of the consumers gravitating towards that platform. What else are we doing? I think certainly with mobile technology and the comms, it allows us to use these technologies, use these mobile apps to further develop apps to share information. It could be, we recently launched an app, it was a wine pairing app. A wine pairing app which was telling you what goes well with the local food that we consume here in Singapore. Those who are familiar, the char kway teow, what goes with char kway teow? What sort of wine? And that app was quite well received. Many people liked that. So again, it is using technology to cater to the evolving needs and of consumers, because everyone is so at ease with using these various technologies, and so it's how you apply these technologies and fit them into your business operations. I think the one who's able to do it best will emerge the winner.
Before we hear from Pablo, any questions on the floor, from the floor, on any of the topics that we have discussed so far? Yes? Can I have a microphone over here, please?
Hi, this is Claire from Spooky. This is a question for both Pablo and Kiepeng. I'm interested in how the digital revolution has disrupted or changed the way consumer brands potentially go to market, and the relationships between consumer brands and trade partners like NTUC FairPrice.
Pablo, you want to take a question?
So I'll start with myself then. I think it's early days yet to say that consumers have radically changed. I think at the end of the day, when you go to their houses, what you actually find is that they're doing things differently, but they're not actually, or they're getting things in different ways, but they're not actually changing their lives completely. Yeah. And also the way that we measure internet is tricky because we measure it all from internet data as opposed to how internet influences people data. Yeah? So we measure likes and clicks, but likes and clicks don't necessarily give you a return on investment at all. It doesn't necessarily say that because somebody's pressed a like, they think your brand is actually better and they're going to buy more products from you. Yeah? So really understanding some of the dimensions is important, and we still don't have the best indicators of what those dimensions are and how internet can actually give you the best return on investment. So we're learning on this, and it's early days. What I can definitely say is that when we launched our ecosystem, when we call it ecosystem, an ecosystem for us is having a web page, having Facebook, and having YouTube to support. And we actually felt that it was going to be easy to engage and that we knew how to do it because Unilever knows advertising, Unilever knows how to do a lot of stuff, so we thought it would be easy to do. It's not that easy. Real engagement means that consumers want to be there and want to spend their time there and want to dedicate of their time to you. Now, if you think of Facebook, they spend their time talking to their friends, or we spend our time in Facebook talking to our friends, posting pictures, interacting, engaging. But when we go to branded solutions, we engage in a completely different way. So being able to drive engagement in the same way that you do with your personal life in Facebook as an interaction with brands is a very tall order. And I don't think there's a lot of companies that have managed to do that in a fantastic way, which actually gives them huge returns on investment or changes habit. I think we're learning how to change habit. Supermarkets, clearly, when you actually go and shop online, that is a change in habit, and there's a whole supply chain behind that. But the reality is that for brands, I think we're still learning on how to do it. There are things, though, where we can provide solutions. And I think the name of the game is by cooperating with each other. So if brands and supermarket work together, so that every time somebody comes and looks up a recipe, we can actually pass it on to the supermarket and say, hey, look, this guy is looking for a recipe. There's a promotion in your supermarket that ties up with this recipe. Why don't you take him and get the click for the purchase? Then all of this is actually going to be worth a lot of money. But as I say, I don't think everybody's there yet, and I don't necessarily think that all the cooperation that needs to take place for it to be efficient and for it to turn into sales is actually happening. And I will just finish this with two things, yeah? One is, if we do internet and new platforms, it has to be to sell more and to build equity for our brands. If we don't do either of those two, we got to question ourselves the return on investment. And I think sometimes when you look at a lot of these very great models that we have on internet, they are questionable.
I fully agree. I think I've always taken the view that, with all this technology, it is how you use it to improve the engagement, improve the shopping experience. Even the Tesco example in Korea. Yes, it was, I think, it's been around for 3 years now. It took the world by storm. But when you look at it, has it displaced? Has it changed the consumer's behavior? Totally. The answer is no. How much we carry 20,000 SKUs. How, can you imagine how many walls you would need to do all your QR code? Impossible. So realistically, these are good things to have, but it's not going to displace the way people shop. At the end, even there are some things which will not change. People look for experiences. The joy of shopping, the joy of cooking, the joy of touching, the joy of smelling, the taste, the sight, the sound, the audio, these things, I think it's like going retro. It will never go away, in my opinion. You see cooking shows, they are getting more popular. I see that a lot of people are now enjoying and wanting to learn how to cook. How do you replicate that in an environment? How do you entice the consumers to want to buy your products, and why? And therefore, it is not binary. It is not because of this that will go. It's not I win, you lose. I think it's how you adopt, make full use of what's available, improve the way you engage your consumers, improve the experiences that each individual, each consumer can get to experience. I think that is going to enhance, and that's going to change the way, because it is changing how consumers shop and buy, and why. And that goes back to what Pablo has said a few times. I think because information is so accessible, we all also need to be transparent in our dealings. And therefore, whether it's on CSR, whether it's about retailing in a responsible way, I think these are things which we need to make sure there are no gaps. Because when there are gaps, I tell you, whatever, there's only one clear path then, and it's downhill.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to take more questions from the floor, but time's up. So thank you, gentlemen, for sharing. We need to move on, so please talk to the panelists outside when you have a chance. Thank you very much.